If you are a free-to-player or low spender here in Raid Shadow Legends, you quickly learn that you need to get the maximum return for your in-game resources in order to be successful. And one way we do that is with the famed multi-dip, right? The double dip, the triple dip, getting multiple rewards for the same spend of your in-game resources. Now, in just a few hours' time, we have a great opportunity for a quadruple dip here in the middle of this fusion event. Now, quad dips happen multiple times in most Fusion and Titan events, so you want to keep an eye out for them. In this particular case, it focuses around this Ice Golems tournament. Now, as you can see, today is Sunday the 8th, and the Ice Golems tournament has been underway for a while, but I hope you haven't been doing Ice Golem runs because the Dungeon Divers event hasn't launched yet. Now, remember, each dungeon tournament is automatically a double dip because the first dip is getting the actual rewards from running a dungeon. So the rewards from the tournament would be the double dip, and then the Dungeon Divers event would give you your triple dip. Now, every player in Raid should be able to get that triple dip. But if you want the quadruple dip, you have to take advantage of this champion training tournament up here that has a 24-hour overlap with this Dungeon Divers event. But the way you take advantage of that is to have an Ice Golem team that has some space for food. Now, you could even take advantage of it by running 4 champions that beat the dungeon and just having one spot for food. But in today's video, I'm going to focus on dungeon duos. And the reason I'm focusing on dungeon duos is because I think most content creators, myself included, we focus on solo champions, building that great solo build that gives you just, the most bang for your buck that you can get. But for players in the mid game, that can be really tricky to build that solo champion. It takes good Great Hall development, maybe some area bonuses and very good gear. And there are only maybe, 15 or 20 really good solo champions in the game anyway, and you need one of those champions. But I promise you, if you are more than 6 months into the game, you have a dungeon duo that you can build. And before that point, if you're 3 or 4 months into the game, there may be some dungeon duos for some of you out there as well. I'm going to theory craft a whole bunch of different team compositions, different dungeon duos that can work in the Ice Golem's Peak, but could also work for you potentially in the Spider's Den or in the Dragon's Lair, or is it Spider's Lair and Dragon's Den? I never can remember. But that's what we're doing today. I hope you're up for it. I am Colred. This is Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. Let's get started. Most times when you are farming these dungeons, especially during a Fusion event or a Titan event, you're going to be farming stage 20 because it's the most efficient stage to farm, both for the dungeon tournament and for the Dungeon Divers event. However, you might not want to farm stage 20. I'm going to be theory crafting some teams here for stage 20. Now, these theory crafts should hold up to stage 25. Remember, when you get to the hard modes of each dungeon, the fight changes. So you would have to adjust that theory craft if you wanted to farm the hard modes. But certainly you could create a duo that could farm hard mode dungeons as well. But like I said, I'm going to be sticking to stage 20 here on the Ice Golem's Peak just for the sake of this video. If you want to see me do videos on the other dungeons, let me know and I'll try to get those out as well. So I think the most important thing about creating a duo for any dungeon is understanding what's required as a minimum for your team to bring in order to create a win condition for your team and to avoid the things that could kill your team. So that's where we're actually going to start. What are the things that are most dangerous here in the Ice Golem's Peak that we have to worry about? So if we go here into the boss guide, this is going to show us a few things. The first most dangerous, loss condition, wipe condition, would be Frigid Vengeance. This is the big boss nuke, right? So the Ice Golem himself will nuke every time he drops below a certain amount of HP, 80%, 60%, 45, 30, and 15%. So the big thing here is not just the nuke, but the second part. This attack will ignore 50% of each enemy's defense for each alive ally. He has 2 minions. Those are his allies. If 2 of them are alive when he nukes, he ignores 100% of your defense. That's going to hit very hard. If 1 of the minions is alive, then that's actually only 50% of your defense ignored. And if both minions are dead, he doesn't ignore any of your defense. So this is the big nuke. There are several ways around this nuke. One is HP burns and poisons, right? So HP burns and poisons, if they drop him below these HP thresholds, they won't trigger the nuke. That's also true for Brimstone, actually, I believe. So you can bring an HP burner or a poison champion, and that's going to allow you to avoid these nukes a little bit. The second way to make this nuke relatively harmless is to make sure that you kill the allies. Now that can be tricky, especially when you're on full auto, because you can't target the minions. So you'd have to bring a lot of AoE damage or have champions that inherently through their AI focus the minions first. There are definitely ways to do that. We can talk about that as well. And then the third thing that you can do would be to bring buffs and debuffs that would allow you to survive this. So obviously decreased attack will help a lot because this is based on his attack. But also you could bring block damage, or you can bring shields. You can bring unkillable buffs. There are all sorts of ways to basically survive Frigid Vengeance, but this is the #1 threat, and so we have to consider this when we're building our duo. Now, there are some other minor threats. Not all of them are listed here. One is that the minion on the left, I believe, places a 100% healing reduction debuff on one of your champions. So if you are relying on regen or heals, that could be problematic if you don't have a cleanse or a block debuffs buff. So that could be something that we consider when we're putting together our duo. And then finally, you have to remember you have to get through the waves before you get to the boss. So you have to have a team that can handle the waves. And that second wave especially can be very tough. So those are really the three big threats. Maybe one minor threat would be this freeze. This freeze could potentially throw a monkey wrench into the works. So maybe there are 4 threats total. But I usually don't worry about the freeze because if you're already handling the healing reduction, you're probably handling the freeze as well, right? Because if you have a block debuffs, then it handles both. So I normally don't worry about the freeze as a separate thing. But okay, so we know what the 3 big threats are. Now let's talk about putting together a duo that can actually handle all 3 threats and get to the boss in, a reasonable amount of time. All right, so we're going to start theory crafting some teams here. Remember that the champions are less important than the roles they play. I'm going to call out a whole lot of champions. Some are going to be epics, some are going to be legendaries. But I want you to know that you don't necessarily need my gear or my champions. You want to think about the concepts behind the teams that we're putting together and hopefully use that as a starting place to start theory crafting your own dungeon duo that can handle, whether it's this dungeon or any dungeon that you're doing. So I will start with some epics just to show you that it can be done with epics. And let's go ahead and just go to epics. Now, the easiest, or not maybe easiest, but the most typical dungeon duo is going to be a tanky damage dealer with a support. Now, in this particular case, for the Ice Golem, you probably want a cleanser or a block debuffs support, but you could also go with a shield champion. You could go with a reviver and a healer. There are a bunch of different ways that you can do it, and it really depends on the damage dealer that you take. Another option, by the way, just to mention this, would be 2 tanky damage dealers, both in regen. Like that can work. Like maybe one champion isn't quite strong enough to do it on his or her own, but you put them together and all of a sudden you've got enough. So for instance, let's say Venom Mage is a solo champion that you can use here. Artak is a solo champion you can use here, but you don't quite have the gear for them to solo it. Well, put them together and maybe they can do it together without a support champion. But in this particular case, I'm going to go with sort of the classic, traditional, safest, most reliable route, which is going to be a tanky damage dealer in regen, and then a support that kind of covers your bases. Now, I already mentioned Venom Mage, so why don't we start there? Venom Mage, if you don't know, let's go ahead and look at her here. Where's my Venom Mage? There she is. Okay, so her abilities, the thing that helps her really do great here for this this particular dungeon, she has the A3, which is the AoE, and it's going to put out poisons. That's going to really help you clear the waves. But there are 2 things that help you survive the boss. The first is this decrease attack on the A2. So decrease attack obviously makes the nuke hurt less, which is really good. And then she also has this passive, enemies under heal reduction debuffs inflict 15% less damage. So she's got a passive that reduces the damage as well. And again, she puts out the heal reduction herself for 3 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. And you're going to be going faster than the boss, so it should be up 100% of the time. Now, one of the things that you may know is that I have emergency heal as a blessing here. This is another thing that you can do. So in addition to whatever regen that I happen to have here, I don't have her in full regen. I just have her in a little bit of immortal. You can see I have a blood shield ring. So remember, with every hit of a blood shield ring, you get a tiny shield. Now, that's a little bit of damage mitigation, but it works with this emergency heal perfectly. So anytime a shield is broken or expires or is removed from your champion, you get a heal. This will be a 6% heal. So this is one of the reasons why I can run her without regeneration, because she's getting this additional healing of 6% of her max HP. Plus she's got the little bit of immortal. So that's 9% of her max HP is going to be healed basically every turn. And then, of course, she's going in with a support champion. She's not going in solo. But this emergency heal trick works really well. If you have a blood shield ring, or if you have a support who brings shields, you can consider that as well. So that's a nice little addition. By the way, you can also bring in this relic here, the golden elixir. If you have a copy of this, this can be incredibly powerful. So whenever the wearer drops below 50% HP, they're instantly healed by 10% of their max HP. And this actually gets boosted up, with each level. So it goes up to 20%. And by the way, this doesn't have a cooldown. So it can literally be every single time your champion drops below 50% HP. So that's another way that you can get regeneration in here. So you don't always need a great regeneration set or a full set of 6 immortal pieces or whatever. You can kind of mix and match these different strategies in order to get enough survivability onto your damage dealer. Now, you don't have to go with a super tanky damage dealer like this. You could go with somebody a little bit more squishy, like perhaps a Kemptum. I've got a Kemptum in immortal and regen here. Also with emergency heal, as you can see, and a blood shield ring. So this is a lot of regen for what would be a squishy champion. I would probably go with a reviver support for a Kemptum, because even with the regen, a Kemptum's likely to die. But this is another poison champion also with Hex. And, that's good for the boss, right? Poisons are good for the boss, also good for the waves. But without a decreased attack or some other mitigation, a Kemptum's likely to die. So I want to make sure my support is really tanky and has revive if I bring somebody like a Kemptum. Another thing to consider is your affinity. A Kemptum would be neutral affinity. Venom Mage is strong affinity. That's going to change who gets targeted both in the waves and in the boss fight. So unless I bring a strong affinity support here, the support is going to be the target of most of the hits. So if I bring even a neutral affinity support, they're going to be targeted. So I want to make sure that they can survive. Now, out of all of the supports that I have several options. I could certainly bring somebody like Demitha, who's going to give me some block damage, gives me some cleanses, gives me some heals. She's built very fast, so I'm going to get around to her skill set really early or really frequently. She personally doesn't have any regen, but she might be enough to support Venom Mage here. I could use my, let's see, I don't know where she is. Here, I could use my Godseeker Aniri. Now, I know Godseeker Aniri is a Void Affinity epic, but she is built in regen for Sand Devil's Necropolis, so she would certainly be extremely tanky and give me a revive and some heals here. She doesn't bring a lot else to this particular fight, so it's not going to be fast. She's going to be kind of slow. I could bring somebody like Doompriest. Doompriest is going to give me that cleanse, a little bit of healing, increase attack. I could turn off in, if I wanted to use the team setup, I could just turn it off. And this duo could certainly do very well as long as Doompriest is tanky enough, because remember, she's going to be weak affinity here. She's going to be taking the hits, and Doompriest isn't inherently super tanky. So you want to make sure, maybe even put her in regen, or just make sure she's got enough defense and HP. HP is more important than defense, by the way. Remember that the boss ignores defense. So high HP numbers, we're talking like 60k plus, preferably, if you can get that. Another support I could use might be Rector Drath. This is, again, a weak affinity champion, but remember, she brings Perfect Veil. Perfect Veil gives you some damage mitigation. It also makes targeting a little bit tricky. And then she has a decrease attack on her A1. That's nice. Of course, remember, Venom Mage already has a decrease attack. And then she has healing and reviving. So this is a really powerful duo that can probably do just great. And I would probably run this. Let's, in fact, go ahead and just run this, and we can talk more about the team as we go. Now, another consideration is going to be time. And then a final consideration is going to be what happens with your food. So I didn't put the food in here. I should have probably. But basically, these are going to be slow runs. These are generally going to be slow runs. They're going to be faster the higher up in the power scale that you go. So when you start to bring really powerful damage dealers, or really like overwhelming supports, that's going to allow you to speed up this whole process. But as you can see here, this is a team that's going to get the job done because we've got plenty of heals. We've got regen. I think my Rector Drath is in Guardian, so she's actually got some regen built into her set as well. So in addition to the continuous heals that she's giving, and just the straight up direct heal that she's giving, she's also got that regen as well. So I don't expect either of these champions to get too close to death at level 20. Part of that is just because of my level of gear. But I actually do think the duo could do this with, a reasonable level of mid-game gear. Neither one of these champions has been rebuilt in probably over a year and a half, maybe 2 years. So they're both probably in gear that is, like I said, closer to mid-game gear than the end-game gear I have on some of my best champions. So yeah, this shouldn't be a problem. I do want to get to the boss here just so you can see the boss fight. But for epics, like I mentioned, there are tons of epics that you can use. But one of the things that I said in my intro to this video was if you are past the 6-month mark, I guarantee you have a duo that you can use because you have a great free champion at the 6-month mark, and that is Sill of the Drakes. Sill of the Drakes is a perfect duo complement, both in Ice Golem's Peak and in the Dragon's Lair. In addition, she can be good in Spider's Den as well, depending on the team composition. So she's going to bring you stuns for the waves. She's going to bring you heal. It's basically a regen set. It's just shy of a regen set. Every turn that she goes, she's bringing you that heal. She has a slow and a turn meter reduction on her A1. So this is an extremely powerful kit for supporting somebody else. Plus she has that, revive in case your damage dealer dies. The one downside is, like Rector Drath, she doesn't have a cleanse. So what's likely to happen here is we will take a healing reduction at some point. But if we're near full health and we're going fast enough, we're going to outrun that healing reduction before we get into trouble. And like you can see, we have the decrease attack up there. We have the healing reduction, which activates Venom Mage's passive damage reduction of 15%. So we're really not in danger here. The other thing is because the poisons are going to do a big chunk of the damage, we might not actually activate the nuke too many times. We might even be able to avoid it altogether. Now there's going to be some RNG in that, right? Because what about resistances? How much damage are you doing directly? Did you crit? All those things can impact whether or not you hit Crisis in the wrong way. Like right there, we just got the nuke. That was just up to RNG. But with the decrease attack and the healing reduction there, and then the Perfect Veils, we had a lot of mitigation. You can see we basically didn't take much damage at all. The allies were dead, the minions were dead, so there was no ignored defense on that hit, and it basically didn't touch us. And that's the goal, right? That's the goal, is to build a team that can handle all of these various aspects of the dungeon that are coming our way. And that would be true for the other dungeons as well. In fact, teams that do well here in Ice Golem often do well in the Dragon. The thing you got to worry about in the Dragon fight is, of course, the stun and the big nuke from the Dragon and the poisons. Well, that's very similar to what you have to deal with here. So again, maybe you'd want to cleanse there, but again, you probably are okay if you have a decreased attack and you have that damage mitigation. You can see 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Not fast, but reliable. And if I put food in here, I'm going to have 3 food champions constantly gaining XP, as I should have done. I should have put in here just, to show you what was happening. But okay, so epics can do it. Epics can do it. They don't have to be geared crazy well. Yes, I have some empowerments here. Yes, I have, some blessings here. But I'll just go ahead and show you these two champions so you can see they're not built in like super end game gear. They are built decently well. But they're not crazy OP. All right, so we do have Reflex and Impulse here. So she's not in Guardian set. I thought she was in Guardian set, so maybe I did rebuild her at some point. I don't remember doing it. But let's go ahead and look at the stats. So 70k HP, like I said, I think you want over 60k. Defense of 4k, I definitely think you want over 3k here. Speed of 275, which is nice. Probably faster than you need. I would say if you don't have a speed aura, you probably want at least 240 speed. I think that would be fine. Remember, the faster you go, the more regen you're going to get, the more heals you're going to get, the more debuffs you're going to get. So it does matter, and I would say 240 speed is probably good without a speed aura. If you have a speed aura, you could maybe drop down to like 220, 225, and that might be enough. So decently built. I'll show you the area bonuses aren't a lot, but there are some. Yeah, so a little bit of speed, a little bit of defense and HP. But again, more than I need for sure. Let's look at Venomage. Venomage, again, just Immortal and Perception with that Blood Shield ring. And again, the stats here, about 70k, 3k defense. Like I said, 246 speed. This is more the numbers that I would probably shoot for a duo. Again, around 240 to 250 for speed is really good. 3k defense and at least 60k HP. But chances are, even if I had less HP, this would be fine because as you saw, I didn't really ever get in trouble, right? So the HP total didn't drop. So the HP number wasn't all that necessary, although there is some of that regeneration. All right, let's go ahead and try a different team here. I do want to try a team. Yeah, let's go ahead and throw in Scylla the Drakes to the team. And let's go ahead and support somebody who maybe is a little bit sexier in terms of their damage. So I want to bring in maybe, the current fusion would actually be kind of interesting. He's extremely squishy though. But let's go ahead and bring in somebody who's a little bit squishy. Let's go ahead and bring in Thor here. So if I have a squishy damage dealer who might die, especially a direct damage dealer who might trigger the nuke from the boss, I need a reviver. And so this pairing could work really well. It could be really fast, potentially, because my Thor is built pretty well. Now, one of the things that I will say, if you go with a direct damage dealer, you might want to consider Bloodthirst or Lifesteal on them. So I actually will show you my Thor. My Thor does have Lifesteal on him. He's not built super well. This is not crazy stats. Got pretty good crit damage at 291, decent speed at 253. He's got enough accuracy at 458 to land all his debuffs, but 42k HP, 2700 defense, 6000 attack. So again, probably late mid-game stats there, maybe late game stats there, but not ridiculous, Here are his masteries. There's his blessing, Nature's Wrath. Obviously he's booked, no relic, so achievable for some of you in the maybe late mid game. And then let's actually look at Scylla the Drakes. I don't know how she's built. I can't remember how she's built. I don't think she has any regen or immortal. Where's my Scylla the Drakes? There she is. Okay, so she does have one set of immortal. So she's going to get a little bit. And she does have a blood shield ring, so she must... No, she has Chainbreaker, so she doesn't have... Oh, she has that for Scare Boss, that's why. Okay, but she's not going to get any regen out of that. So she just got a little bit of regen here, and then obviously her passive, and then her stats, again, 80,000, 4k defense, 220 speed, so a little bit on the slow side here, but not awful, and enough accuracy to get the job done. So let's go ahead and see how this works. Again, if you're going with a more damagey damage dealer, somebody who's just more powerful and going to hit harder, especially a direct damage dealer, you're going to need that reviver because it's very likely you're going to trigger the nuke and that your damage dealer is going to die. So here, we get the stun out. That's nice. Oh, he is attacking the minions, which is really nice. I didn't know if he would. And so we are going to trigger the nuke, but for this first one at least, we're not going to have to worry about the ignore defense. We're probably going to trigger one with at least one or two of the minions up, though. And again, you know, that healing between the bloodthirst, or I'm sorry, the lifesteal and the passive of Seal of the Drakes, you know, really gives us a lot of survivability and helps us survive things like the freeze. And again, if we get the healing reduction, not a huge deal because we can go ahead and revive Thor just fine. Again, you know, one of the things you could do to mess around with this is mess with your affinity. So I could put in a weak affinity support so that Thor doesn't become the target. And then the support becomes the target. And that could actually even increase the survivability of Thor more. Or you could say, no, I'd rather have Thor the target because if somebody's going to die, I don't want my reviver to die. So that's really up to you. You got to play test that and see how that works, you know, in the game as you go through. So this is not too bad. This is minute 28, much better than the 4 minutes that we saw before. And that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Again, you don't have to have the stats I have. You don't even have to have the champions I have. This is just combos of champions that you can think about in terms of roles. Direct damage dealer requires a reviver, whereas in the previous case, when I had Venom H, I didn't really need the reviver. I could have just gone with somebody that was maybe like a cleanser and a healer, somebody who was tanky, and that would have been fine, but I used Rector Drath just because she was built the right way. Let's talk about maybe a non-healing scenario. Like, we have Mithrala. A lot of us have Mithrala as a free champion. You can actually get her even before you get Seal of the Drakes in some cases, or maybe you get her afterwards. But she's going to bring a lot. She's going to bring her strengthen, increased defense, shield, cleanse. She's going to bring you a hex for the waves. She's going to bring you petrification, you know, based on that. So this could be really good. And you could certainly use her with maybe somebody who has a regen situation going on. So let's see. Who could I bring? Who would be a good pairing for? Well, let's just try. It's somebody who's not going to die. So let's go ahead and try my Artak. Now, Artak is strong affinity, which is going to make Mithrala the target, but that's okay. Doesn't really matter. The AoE's Artak should survive, and then Mithrala is going to heal everything. And let's go ahead and put in some food this time. Let's remember to do that. Should have done that last time as well, because this whole thing is about food. All right, let's do that. We'll do a super raid here. Now, one of the things about the addition of food, it's going to change things. It'll probably slow things down a little bit because if they don't die, they're going to take turns. And that's going to slow them down. Now, the other thing about a support like Mithrala is she's going to be putting up shields and strengthens and increased defenses. That means the boss might not even kill the minions. So these minions might live, like the food might live through the whole fight, slowing it down, maybe, you know, 30% or something. I don't know. It could be even more than that. But yeah, that's just something to be aware of. So it's hard to design a team that's going to have the food killed quickly. Unless you want to go slower than the enemy, which you rarely want to go with a duo team. So just be aware of that. Again, you know, I just run this when I'm doing something else. I run it in the background. Oh, I do have to give you a tip about food in just a moment. I'll try to remember that at the end of this when you're doing multi-battles, because there is an option that you have to select or deselect in order to not mess this up and waste energy. But as you can see here, oh, my Mithrala has a 5-star Brimstone. That can help too, because Brimstones don't trigger the boss's nuke, but will do damage. So she can even bring some damage there, plus her poisons. So she's actually a really good support for this. If you have a damage dealer who, 1, won't die, and 2, probably has some built-in survivability, whether that is a regen set, or some champions just have their own sustain, and that could be fine too. All right, so at least 1 minion died here, or 1 food champion died here, which is good. That'll speed things up a little bit. And they're actually getting targeted, which is kind of funny. I don't know why. She's actually strong affinity. I guess she's just She was the weakest champion. Okay, so the HP burns and the poisons and the brimstone are going to do a lot of the work here, and we don't really have to worry about triggering the boss. And the minions won't come back, and that means we don't have to kill them again. We don't have to watch their animations, so that actually will kind of speed it up a little bit. It's nice when you have an HP burner like Artak for the minions to actually stay alive, because then you get more HP burns. But, you know, it is what it is. And as you can see, you know, even though Mithrala doesn't have any heals, she's still, with her shields, with her strength, and with all that stuff, she's not really at risk of dying. And if she does die at this point, it wouldn't matter, because Artek would finish the job without her. So there we go. There we go. Now we're done. All right, 2 minutes and 57 seconds. So a little bit slower than Thor. Obviously, Thor is going to be extremely fast because he's a direct damage dealer. And yeah, just a reminder, I did want to say this. If you go here and you do the multi-battles and you have food in your team, you see this top option, continue multi-battle even when all champions hit max level. You want to deselect that. What will happen is when all of your champions hit max level, I'm assuming that your damage dealer and your support are max level. So when your food hits max level, it will stop running auto battles. And then you can go ahead and swap out the team. Okay. So that's what you want to do if you're doing this. Make sure that this is deselected. You can click this, click this, click this. If you want, all of these are fine. You know, that's not going to mess with you. Although I usually, you know, try to do that selectively, all of those selectively. And yeah, and then you can run them in the background if you want. But so let's think about one more team here. Let's theory craft one more team. Oh, I should have left the food in. But so we had a direct damage dealer. We had epics. We had an HP burner. I guess we had a poisoner. You could think about, again, maybe another support who's... I got one that's kind of cool. I don't know, it'd be kind of fun for me anyway. Because they're two of my favorite champions. So if I run Corvus and Freya here, again, you know, if you're looking at Corvus, if you don't know Corvus, I love this champion. He's such a good champion. But he's actually in a shield set, so he's not in regen. And simultaneously, Freya basically she's not in a regen set. She has shields. I don't think she has any heals, does she? Oh, she heals the ally by 20% of the max H effect. If she prevents their death, which hopefully never happens. But she has this prevents their death, right? So as long as your damage dealer has the highest crit damage, she'll prevent their death and then heal them. So you have sort of just shields. Basically, we just have shields. You can see no relic. I'll show you her stats, I guess. Not that they matter so much. Decent speed, good defense, right? And then Corvus is also built well. He is in that shield set. It's not even a bolster set. It's just an old school shield set. You know, decent stats. Again, 5k defense, 72,000 HP, and 261 speed. But we're going to have a defense aura. And so this is just two defensive-based champions supporting each other. He does have damage mitigation, so 5% less damage for each poison on the target, which is really nice. Let me find those food champs again. And then we'll just fire this off and see what happens. She's got an A1 provoke, AoE provoke, and then she has a cleanse and a block debuffs. And so it's just like the combination of the two champions, you know, brings a lot of what we need. It doesn't bring any healing. But the hope is that we can blow through the waves before our shields expire. And then against the boss, we can beat the boss down with poisons. And with the damage mitigation, he's not going to do much damage to us. And the shields should be cycling around pretty fast. We shouldn't have to worry about any debuffs. A healing reduction doesn't matter. Doesn't matter because we're not healing at all. We have no healing whatsoever. But this could still potentially get the job done. Also, by the way, Corvus has a buff extension. So when the shields go up, he could extend it. So they're going to be up basically a lot. Maybe not all of the time, but a lot. And you can see here, Freya has taken a tiny bit of damage, but not enough to really worry about just yet. Oh, and Corvus has a decreased attack. so we're pretty good in there. And I think Corvus also has a brimstone. So yeah, the decreased attack is on his A1, and then he's going to get those poisons out there. He gets out the poison sensitivity. And so now we've got a 20% damage reduction on the boss because of those 4 poisons. And then again, we've got the increased defense and the shield. Once the allies are down, once the minions are down, we probably don't have to worry about triggering his nuke too often. Could happen, of course, could happen. No, we triggered it. But we had the decreased attack up as well. So that's, 50% less attack plus all that damage. Now we've got the max damage reduction from the poisons. And yeah, we really don't have to worry about this. So that's it. That's how you build a dungeon duo. Again, you want to think about one for the dragon's lair, and you want to think about one for the spider's den. Spider's den is a little bit different, especially, if you're at if you're normal mode versus hard mode, right? Hard mode is different than normal mode, but consider what you want to bring. Consider what the fight requires, and then see what duos can bring the minimum requirements, basically. So like I have a duo for the Spider's Den stage 20, which is just Lydia and Newt, right? Because Lydia brings the decreased defense and weaken. Newt nukes 1 time and the boss is dead. That's my duo. I don't have I don't know if I have a solo champion for stage 20. I might. But that's pretty fast, and that's basically what I rely. And so, experiment, try it out. Let me know in the comments below if you have questions about duos you think might work or might not work, or if you have a duo that you feel should work but isn't. Maybe we can troubleshoot that duo. And again, one of the things I didn't talk about here was resistance on any of these teams. You could certainly build a resistance support who won't get frozen, who won't get the healing reduction, and then could just be there as a reviver or whatever, and that could work basically with any kind of damage dealer. So just, again, experiment, theory craft, and talk amongst yourselves. Talk in the comments, talk in the Discord, or talk in your clan chats, and I'm sure somebody will give you some advice about how to build a great dungeon duo, because it's worth it. All right, that is it for me today. Thanks so much for hanging out. I have been Colred. I will see you in another video soon.